Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 125th film. It's the 2018 Hindi language Indian comedy drama called Rajma Chawal. It's directed by Leena Yadav. It stars Rishi Kapoor, Anirudh Tanwar, Amrya Dastur, Sheeba Chaddha, Aparshakti, Khurana, and Diksha. So, I am Jesse. I apologize for my pronunciation of those names, but 125 episodes in. This is huge. This is. When we started this a couple of years ago, there was no way on earth that I thought we'd be getting to 125 episodes. And a couple of years later, here we are, and I am riding solo again today. I hope that my voice is not too monotonal and boring for you listening, but I am going to chat today about Rajma Chawal. And if you did want to check this film out, give us a pause now. Come back later because I will be spoiling this and giving away a few key plot points and ideas and following the structure of this show as we go. And as we usually start with our fast flicks, where we do a quick summary of the film that we're covering for the day. And my fast flicks for Rajma Chawal is that it's about a father trying to reconnect with his son using social media. But this is done in a bit of an unconventional way. And if you've seen the film or know a little bit about this, then it's going to be no surprise to you that I'll be going into a bit of detail about how that's done and whether some ethical and moral concerns are probably highlighted in doing this. We like to talk about what we can find out about a film, what went into making it, what happened, where it was funded, all that sort of stuff. And as usual with Netflix, we have a little bit of a nice story with this one. So this was filmed between November 2017 and Jan 2018. It wasn't released until October later that year in 2018. So it debuted at the London Film Festival on the 13th of October before hitting Netflix at the end of November 2018. And it did play at the New York Film Festival 12 months later in November 2019 as well. Like I mentioned before, this is a Hindi language Indian film, so it was filmed in and around the Delhi areas of India. And I think the key thing is that you need to understand what the title means. And Rajma Chawal, I'd never heard of it before, but it's a literal translation of rice and beans. It's a dish, and apparently it's a Sunday tradition in India, and it sort of represents this idea of home and family. And I think there's not a better way of talking about this film than looking at it like that. So I guess the title for this film came about with Rishi Kapoor, who is a well-known Hindi actor. He was the one that suggested this film's title, and he said there's a scene in the film which the kid is asked about who eats Rajma Chawal with a spoon. And the director said it's a comment on the generational gap. This entire film is about two generations accepting each other, and as we get into some scenes, that's what it's about. It's about this father and son, their inability to communicate with each other, and how do you do that in a modern world when everyone is so obsessed with things such as social media and glued to their phones. Netflix got on board. They showed interest in this film, and they were looking for distributors, and the director said that Netflix is a perfect platform for a film like this, because the movie, like I've mentioned, it's about technology, and it's doing it in an interesting way. And the producers, they realized, hey, we're not going to be able to reach 130 million subscribers or viewers, across 190 different countries. And this platform allowed this film to be seen by people all across the world. And I guess even, myself, without Netflix, there is no way that I probably would have put this one on. The director did mention, though, that at first they probably weren't as thrilled about not going that traditional distribution method, because, there's that stress about, oh no, my film's not going to be in cinemas. And but then the director said, they spoke to everyone in the office, and all the 20-year-olds in the office are like, yeah, Netflix, like that's the coolest thing that can happen to this film. So I guess it's a positive. It's a positive that this is on Netflix. People around the world can see it, and obviously around the world, this has a different name as a title. In Greek, it's called Friend Request. In Russian, it's called Rice and Beans, so that literal translation of what Rajma Chawal is. In Vietnamese, it's called When Dad Invites You, and if you've seen the film, this plays a little bit on the dad reaching out on social media to his son. English translation somewhere, it's called Spilling the Beans, and then finally in Spanish, it's called An Updated Father, and I guess that's a bit of a play on the word updated with social media, etc. It did have a working title of Cross Connection, and I guess that's that idea too of that old media technology. You've got those cross wires and that inability to communicate sometimes, or hear the true message when you have this cross lines. And maybe I'm just talking, knowing back in the day on the telephone, sometimes you'd get lines that crossed over, and I guess that's that play on the words. So critical consensus for this one. Rotten Tomatoes, 60% on 5 reviews. So not many people have gone out of their way to review this one. The audience only had 3 people that had reviewed it on Rotten Tomatoes. So one of the really low ones that we've seen on this podcast. IMDb had it at 5.8 out of 10, and that's on about 1,600 reviews. And Letterboxd again on that 2.6 out of 5 on about 240 reviews. So not a lot of people have gone out of their way to get online and give this one a rating. And that's where we're going to head now, I guess, into the early thoughts for me for this one. And it's tricky. This one was hard at the start because I did think it was a bit all over the shop to begin with. I just couldn't work out if it was meant to be a comedy or if it was meant to be a meaningful drama or something that's meant to be pulling at your heartstrings. But even though it did have this clunky start, it did flow fairly nicely and had a decent enough message to give this one a watch. And hopefully as I talk through a few characters and scenes, then you might be able to sort of get that idea and maybe want to check this one out yourself as well. So without further ado, let's talk about some characters. And I'm just going to mention briefly 3 characters. And there are heaps and heaps of side characters in this one that probably all deserve their own chat or their own looking into each of them. But the main one is Kabir, and he's this son who's recently lost his mother. He's being forced to leave the family home, move to a new part of Delhi, the New Delhi, and he's got this longing that the relationship with his dad is not as good as it was with his mother. And he likes music. He's a musician. This is that thing that sort of keeps him going, this idea of being with a band. And the start though, he comes across so depressed and down. It was really, really hard to connect with him. And he almost came across as this little whiny puppy dog that you just wanted to be like, come on, snap out of it. We don't want to spend a whole movie watching you be down and out. And I think it's really important to note that it wasn't just him that was feeling this down and out. His dad was also grieving the loss of the person that sort of kept them together, and he just did it in a different way, and he wanted to reconnect with his son but was unable to do that in traditional methods that I guess cultures used to, because his son is obsessed with his phone, and the dad Raj, he wanted to connect with the son, and he buys a phone and he does all these things, tries to reach out to him through technology. And the son does things that son or kids would do. Why would I want to be friends with my parent on social media? So blocks the parent, and just things like that struggles with this loss of the wife as well. But he just doesn't know how to go about it. And it does, and this is a spoiler alert, he does pay someone to be a friend with his son in the end, and that's never going to go down well. And in narrative structure, an audience is going to understand where this is going to go and what's going to happen. So in that sense, it was a little bit predictable. And that leads me to the last person that I'd like to talk about, which is this character Tara that was created by Raj, the dad, or her real name was Sir. She's displayed as this almost gold digger who wastes money, has had a troubled past, but in the same way has these similarities with Kabir, that has a really poor relationship with the family and with the father. But you can see these redeeming qualities about her. So it's sort of nice to track her and follow her as a character, because you know that there's going to be some sort of positivity. And although her arc probably wasn't as explored as well as Kabir's, it was nice to see someone who was facing similar things as Kabir. Leena Yadav is the director, has 8 directing credits. Nothing I've seen, so I'm not going to comment on her career, but hopefully some more Netflix films coming out in the future, which we can keep track on this show. So time to talk about some scenes that stood out, some ones that I didn't necessarily like. The first one that I'd talk about is, I guess, the first part is this idea of music, and we often see this a lot in the Indian language films on Netflix, is that the music plays a big part in these films. And a lot of these songs that Kabir played with the band, I didn't actually mind. The lyric translations were pretty poor. Because I watched these films with the subtitles on, and well, obviously I needed to with this one anyway. But the lyric translations they weren't that good. But the songs were catchy and they seemed pretty cool. I also like there's a scene with Kabir where he is at the train station meeting this girl who he thinks is Tara, and he grabs her hand, he runs her through the train, and then sort of bails on her. And he says, this is so you can know what it feels like when someone leaves you. And I thought that was a kind of cute little moment in this sort of romance that we were seeing between these two characters. The things that possibly weren't as good for me was, so there's a lot of, I don't know whether it's translations in culture, but there's a scene with the dad in a bra shop and he's making jokes about cups and wanting a cup of tea. And I was like, it's just a little bit iffy for me. The way that they did these Facebook conversations too, with profile pictures of each of the characters and these intercut video conversations between Kabir and this girl Tara with the dad's voice, it felt a little bit weird. And finally, there's this one scene where Kabir's down and out again, and he's sitting on the side of the road in the gutter, and this random guy comes up to him and he goes, I hope you're not considering suicide. And he says, it was very painful, I've tried it once. Maybe this again is something that was lost in translation, but it felt so odd sitting there in the middle of this film, this conversation, that it just didn't sit right at all. This movie was trying to say a few things though, and there's quite a few nice little ideas that you can pick up on it, and obviously that connection with family and culture and that lack of communication at times, or that generational change where it's really hard to communicate with younger people who aren't used to communicating without using their fingers on their phones. The way that people don't, back in the day before phones, you'd call someone and say, I'll meet you at the park at this time, or I'll meet you at the shops, or I'll meet you at the movies, and you just rock up expecting them to be there. Whereas now it's that constant communication. I'm just getting on the train. I'm 5 minutes away. I'm just parked the car. That idea of communication has completely changed, and I think this film does it in a fairly okay way, not necessarily in the right way, because we do see the negative impact that communication through phones can have, especially if you start lying and taking on personas that aren't your own. Masculinity too is an interesting sort of idea in this one, where the men sort of stand in Indian society, because there's a few comments about fathers know best and they're so important to the family, and I think that cultures are definitely changing from that way, where there's more idea of a family unit that works together. So they touched on that, and then that idea too, and I'm not massively understanding in the historical background of the British going in and taking over India, but you've got that idea of old Delhi versus new Delhi, and that idea, I guess, about this new world that people need to communicate through. So IMDb, we have this segment where we jump onto IMDb if we wanted to check any actors or actresses out. I didn't use IMDb for this film. I did jump on Google though, because there's this festival and they keep mentioning it's called Diwali. So I wanted to check it out what it was, and it's this Hindu festival where they have lights. It's held between October and November every year, and it's particularly associated with Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, and it marks the beginning of the financial year in India. And the visuals of these scenes were quite beautiful and quite nice, and I think it was just nice to have a little bit of background as to the significance of that festival for Indian culture. And I think it's almost time for me to wrap this one up. And on this show, we give the film a rating out of 5 with a little bit of a summary, and hopefully this is giving you some insight into the film, and you may want to go back and check it out yourself. But like I mentioned at the start, I did struggle at the start to work out the tone of this one. It did pick up. It definitely picked up. It did a respectable job of highlighting the difficulties that are sometimes faced by parents trying to communicate with their kids or people of a younger generation. The music wasn't too bad. Like I mentioned, sometimes some of the songs in these Netflix originals are a little bit draining or go on for what seems like an endless amount of time. But the songs in these ones, they suited it quite well with these club scenes, and they were catchy. They had a nice little beat, and yeah, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. So give it a crack if you're interested in checking this one out. We are on social media. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. We pop posts up every week with a question sort of to do with the film that we've looked at that week. And I guess this week I just wanted to know, have you been guilty of being on your phone too much at times? And I think that this one, everyone I'm guessing who has some sort of device would probably say, yeah, if I look back on myself, there'd be times where been out at a restaurant, been out with friends, and I'm too busy about what's going on, too worried about what's going on with the world outside than the people that are actually there with me at the moment. So I'm wondering if that's happened to you. If so, pop that onto our post on social media, and please do subscribe, give us a follow, download our episodes if you can. It keeps us up in those charts so other people can find us. Big catalogue now, like I mentioned, 125. I wasn't expecting to do this one by myself, but we've got there, and 125 episodes, a lot of movies that you can go and check out and listen to our discussions on these films. Back again next week for another episode. And it's another international film. So it's an Italian film from 2018. It's a comedy called Natale a Cinque Stelle, which is an English translation of Five Star Christmas. It's directed by Marco Rizzi, and it stars Andrea Osvart, Martina Stella, Bjorn Friedberg. So that's the cast for that one. An Italian comedy. So we have done a few Italian films on this show, so I'm looking forward to giving that one a crack and seeing if it can make me laugh. So thank you very much for joining me. Hope you've enjoyed this short little episode on Rajma Chawal, and we will see you soon.